guys, Ryan here from Diversco and CubeScan, and today we're going to be reviewing our CubeMaster software. So CubeMaster software is essentially a database management program that allows the CubeScan and various other componentry to integrate into almost any WMS system, ERP, or even a freight management system, which we call an FMS. CubeMaster runs with the Microsoft SQL database in the background, and that database is run locally on the PC, and that is done in order to keep the trolley and the system functioning correctly and as it should, even if there is a power outage or a network outage. So if we jump in and we open up our CubeMaster software, you can see that it's presented with a user login screen. Now, obviously you can have different user logins, or you can just have the one user login, that's up to you. Typically we just run a local admin Windows profile, and then we just have a user that can just log in as is without creating special profiles, and typically that user is WMS for warehouse management software, and the password is WMS as well, all lowercase. So if we jump in, we can see that we're presented with a very beautiful UI. Over on the left hand side here, we are given or presented with labels, or present the operator with labels that they can use to verify, validate, or complete records if they require. There's some input fields and some checkboxes, and I'll come back to those shortly, and then a graphical display on what that interface is going, or what that cube is going to look like when it is scanned through into the system. So I'll open up as well our photography software. So we just run a Canon EOS 1500D camera, and that allows us to get really high resolution and very crisp images into the system. Now, what we do is we use that camera to get high resolution images, and the software compresses those images down to a more manageable size, and so that those images can be stored for a longer period of time. Typically those images are used within the WMS system and they're not customer facing. However, customers have taken this to the next level, where they set up the camera with a special tripod and a special sort of photography box, and they put the item in the photography box, and they take an image that will be presented to different potential customers on their website. So as we can see, because we have the labels presented on the left hand side here, and because it runs a Microsoft SQL database, one of the real strengths of CubeMaster is that it's infinitely, what we call is infinitely configurable. So there's 21 different user fields that can be used, apart from a couple of other different fields. Length, width, height, weight, volume are all excluded from those 21 fields as well, because they're obviously down here. One of the strengths of CubeMaster, because of that, is that it's infinitely configurable. So with some customization and some spec creation before, we can create all sorts of labels and essentially characteristics that are custom and unique and usable to you. So things like this client had SKU type. Values must be greater than 0. This client had items like SKU type, whether it's robot pickable for their smart warehousing system, what height that item can be dropped from once it's been picked up by the robot, whether it's crushable on a level or a metric that's useful to them, and what gripper is required to pick that item up. Other customers, this is more of a sort of fashion style that they've used. They have multiple different clients, multiple different brands obviously within that client, the description of what the product is, all the way from style to division and department. Now these values must be greater than 0. Now these fields are all read only, and what that means is that essentially they're just going to be looking up that item and pulling through those records and those details, and this operator just has to verify that they have the correct item that they're about to QB-scan or scan. So let's jump in and create our first product. Now let's pretend that we haven't been able to preload the system with the database, and that we're just running as is, which is very typical of a freight management system, where the freight is all coming in and it hasn't been pre-recorded and it hasn't been pre-labeled or pre-barcoded. Now what this system is set up for is a product ID, and then a barcode as well, so they have a unique ID and a barcode. So now these little search boxes here allow us to search for that record within the database. So let's just take this barcode. Let's scan the barcode in front of us. That's on the QB scan, which you can't currently see and which is not being picked up. So now we can see that this barcode has been scanned. It's looked up through the database. It can't find anything. So from here we can continue to enter in that data. Let's just enter something in. And it is some liquid soap. So we can see here that the operator can add an item on the fly. And once they have done that, and now once they've done that, all they do is they cube the item. And the measurements come through, and we can see that that is what the item would look like if it had to fit into the smallest packing cube that it could go into. Now, whether that's in your smart shelving system or just the normal racks, or it's to be packed to go out into a customer, or for whatever reason you're packing it for, or just trying to cube it, that is the smallest cube. If you are worried about having the orientation correct, you can use these little buttons down the bottom here, and we can just swap the orientation around. From that, we can save the button. We can save the item, not save the button, and that'll save that item for us. What that means is that the next time we go to look it up, let's just clear that item quickly. Now what that means is that the next time we go to look that item up, we obviously make sure that we have the barcode box ticked because we're looking up on barcode. We hand scan the product code and it brings up that item, and now we can obviously see that it's been cubed. We can see the last time that it was cubed, and we can see essentially that's just a field that tells us whether it's been cubed or not, in case something else has happened and that cube has gone missing somewhere. We find operators sometimes do some strange things. Okay, so now let's pretend that we have preloaded the database, which is what we typically do with your SKU details and your items, and we can jump in and have a look. These are just some test items that we've run before. We pretend that we loaded it all in, so we can just pull up all those records, and those records will stay there essentially until their database is deleted or until the hard drive fails. So what that means is that there's a local backup for yourself at all times. When we service and maintain the system, we also take a backup as well, so that at any stage in the future, should something occur, we can always roll back to the latest one and hopefully not lose too much data. If data for some reason hasn't been coming across into your system correctly and hasn't been importing, it means that we can then re-export all that data. Now, what we do as well is you'll notice that there's a couple of test items and a couple of other items that are the same here. So there's a PC box, and that was just a test item. What we do is we run a user sequence as well, so that we can see exactly how many times that item has been scanned. You'll notice that they're all eaches, but what that means is that all those dimensions are all different. Now, what I've done here is I've just flipped those dimensions, but it means that we can go back and export each of those records uniquely or individually, but it also means that there is transparency through your system, and we can go through and see what has occurred versus what is being seen to have occurred. CubeMaster stores the various items as a combination of its product ID and its UOM plus a date and time. So what that means is that for multiple levels of UOMs, you can have multiple different options. So let's go ahead and scan an item and see if we can find what it is. Perfect, so that item has brought up that PC box that we scanned earlier. But what we can do now is we can change that from an each. Maybe the box has multiple PCs in it, and we can change that to be a carton. And we can, let's just pretend for now that those dimensions are the same, and we can save that as well. If we jump back into the database, we can see here that we now have 3 items, 2 eaches, and that was what they were scanned at with varying values, and we also have one for a carton. and that item has been scanned once. Now what will happen is that now that you have multiple items at varying UOM levels, CubeMaster is able to look those up. So let's pretend that we are going to look up an item again. We'll scan the same barcode on the box, and we're presented with a window that gives us, the description, the ID, and the UOM level. It also, depending on the site, can give us that site ID as well, plus the barcode and any other information that we require. So for here, we can see that each item has been scanned twice. That was that sequence number, and the carton item has been scanned once. So it's up to the operator then to select the relevant one, which one they're using or which one they're cubing, and use their discretion and select that one. So we'll pretend that we want to scan the carton or recube the carton. We select that one. We can update the dimensions of that. Just run the QB scanner across. It'll update the system. And now let's pretend that we forgot to take a photo. We'll grab our handy camera and we'll take a photo, and you guys will actually get to see what I'm scanning instead of a PC box, because I didn't want to pick up the PC box. But we can have a look, and you can see that I've scanned the barcode scanner plus the liquid soap, which we looked at before. And if we tick the little tick box because we say that we're happy with that item and we save it, typically there's a photo field just up here which will display, not on this system and for this customer or client, but once we have saved that, we should be able to look that up. We can see that there's a carton item now, and if we scroll all the way across, we'll see that there is a photo name as well, and that photo name has the product ID, the unit level of measure, plus a date and a timestamp. What that does is that means that when we export that file into the format that's required for integration, that photo name comes across with you, and that photo can be seen or can be pushed across as well and integrated. And if we jump in here quickly, and I will show you, we jump into the export folder, there is an images folder. If we jump into the images folder, we can see that there is an image there. The image is 462 kilobytes, so it's about half a meg per photo, and we can open that up and have a look at that, and we can see that that's still really good res. We could probably barcode scan that straight off the PC. You know what? Why not? Let's see if we can test this, shall we? Okay, let's have a look for that barcode, and remember, if we looked up, so we want to look up that barcode field from before, and if we scan it, there you go. So you have an image that's great enough or good enough and high res enough to look up a barcode if you scan off the image itself. And you'll remember from earlier, that was the liquid soap that we tested before. Now let's jump into the back end and have a look at what we can do. If we click on the browse menu up the top here, we get another window that pops up, sort of a bit of a secret window just to stop anyone who isn't trained jumping into the back end and doing too much damage. Now there's a little secret trick. We click on the logo and it brings up a hidden field, and if we click on the measured field, we can then see there what items we've measured, what the barcodes were, what the UOMs were, etc, etc. And this just looks up directly from the SQL table, so we can add and remove columns and fields as required. So you could sort by date, etc. Obviously if there was other things there, like if it was robot crushable or pickable or whatever those metrics were to you, you could also sort by those as well. We can also look up the all field. At the moment, the all field is just the barcodes that we've already scanned, and because we're starting with a fresh database, the all and measured fields are the same. So we can just close those little windows. Often we have customers who ask us about the different UOM levels. To add a UOM level, we just jump into the types one, and we can just type an extra one in there. It's not going to be a palette, but let's pretend that you require that palette for whatever it is. You just put the PA in there and then you save it, and you'll have to close a CubeMaster and reopen it for it to relook up that item or those descriptions, but that is there now ready to be used. Another interesting thing that we have done with CubeMaster is that if you import your data from your database and not all those UOM levels are there, it will add those UOM levels into this types section, which means that we can essentially start off with an EA and a CA and not have to worry. And things like liters, inners, outers, packs, boxes, pallets, drums, cases, all those UOMs can get added on the fly without any issues. One of the other functions that obviously we have is an export function, and that'll tell you what type of file it's exporting. So the export type there is just a flat file, which we have labeled CSV, and the file extension is a text. And if we jump into the export folder again, we can see that there is the CubeMaster export file done from a couple of days ago. We are also able, obviously, to do an import. So a similar thing happens, but this is a little pop-up window, and this will look for a masked file with a text extension in the import folder. So if we jump into here, we can see that there's an import folder and there's no file to import, so obviously we're not going to get any results from that. Obviously we work with you guys to integrate these systems and to make sure that they're all working correctly. So there's things like, whether we're updating the database or what level of file we're updating from, whether there's headers, etc., etc. And similar on the export side of that, we want to make sure that the file you receive contains all the information that you require. If none of the information has been updated by the operator, so to speak, that you just require validation that the product is the correct product that they're cubing, then all we will do is we will send you back the ID of the item, whatever makes up that uniqueness, so that you can identify it in your system, and the dimensions, and you update your system in that manner. The user field as well allows us to be able to see which users are currently can access CubeMaster, but we can also obviously then go through and add a user and go through it like that. And finally, obviously the last method of integration is directly into our SQL Server database. So because we run that SQL Server database, the computer has an IP and has a name. If you feel confident that you can do it this way, you're more than welcome to reach into that SQL Server database, find the item table, and update directly from that item table. And again, we will work through this process with you, because the integration is the second half of the equation. The first half is obviously getting the data and getting the correct weight and DIMs for your items, but we want to make sure that the system functions as best as it can and provide you with the most reliable and accurate data while integrating completely into your system, allowing for the best time-saving functions and features and possibilities. Thank you.